What's up, beautiful people of the world? My name is Will Chow, coming to you live from WillYouLaugh.com. And we are coming through you to the power of Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and all those beautiful things that allow you to listen to this podcast on the go while you're driving, doing homework. Maybe you're at the gym through your phone. So I love that. So let's just get straight to it. Today I have a special episode and special technique, and it's special because I call this dessert but no broccoli. So what does dessert but no broccoli mean? It's a concept that I invented, and I think it's a huge rule that I think you should consider following. It's one of my rules, and it's more so an insight to actually finding what you're passionate about and finding something that you actually enjoy doing and you can earn a lot of money from. So this is the whole follow your passion movement. And so for most people listening to this, you are far from your passion, but you want to find a job that you're very passionate about and earns a decent amount of money, if not a lot of money. And then there's a bunch of people who, maybe it's a smaller segment of this audience. Some of you may already have jobs that you kind of like a lot, but there's small things that could be better. How can you transition to an even better or, an improved job? What can you do? And I call this concept, a dessert, but not broccoli, because it's an analogy on food. And it's something that I think is a huge reason why people kind of just fall flat and don't progress towards their passion. And it makes me feel pity, and I sometimes feel sorry for people I see like this. Sometimes I will go to Costco or Sam's Club, and I see people there who are like 60 years old and they're still doing the same job. And I'll see people who were janitors, and then like maybe they were working for a school or place I used to work at, and then I revisit like 5 years later or 10 years later and they're still doing the same job. And sometimes I'll talk to people. Maybe it's people I'm currently working with, or maybe it was back when I was working for, a menial job that was paying minimum wage. And I've met people who have the mentality that I've been doing this job for 5 years. In 10 years from now, I'm going to do the same job for the same pay. I've seen people like this, whether they were food servers or some other profession. And it really, I feel a bit sad for them, because I do believe that almost anyone, if they want to, they can improve their lives. Like, you can always do something on the side to improve your skill set, your abilities, and improve your earning potential. But they're not willing. They've lost the hope and belief, or they were just never introduced to the idea, this new opportunity that you can actually self-improve yourself and develop new skills. Whether it's, there's so many possibilities. There's so many things you could learn. You could learn search engine optimization. You can start freelancing and writing blog posts on the side. You can do something physical. Maybe you sell a product off Shopify. Or if you're really going to go real physical, maybe you're a janitor or you're a food server and you want to stay in that physical profession. Well, you can start learning like wine on the side, and you can become a sommelier, which is pretty much like a wine expert. You make more money. There's a bunch of things you could do. You could develop your social skills. There's a group I'm part of, Toastmasters, and you could join that. And many of the Toastmaster members I've met, some of them have gotten job opportunities. They've gotten raises at their job, all because they finished their Toastmaster certification. And once you finish that, Toastmasters, the organization, which is like a public speaking organization, they'll mail your employer like a certification, and it'll go through like all the work that's necessary. And it's really not even that difficult. So there's all these things you can do, and there's even tactics to like break it apart. So like into like smaller chunks. So if you procrastinate or you have a hard time forming these habits or even attending Toastmasters because it's so intimidating, there's like habit formation guides and all these techniques that you can use to do this. So long story short, it really kind of it frustrates me slightly, but more so I just feel kind of sad for them because I know there's more potential in most people and they just never solve this issue. And I'm not the first person to realize this. If you read old school books like by Napoleon Hill, it's the same type of thing. There's this whole passage in a book about where Napoleon Hill talks about this guy on the street who pops popcorn. And 10 years from then the guy's still popping popcorn and making the same amount of money. Yet this other guy who started at the same position and is now a CEO of this massive company. What was the difference? And it all starts with the belief that you can improve yourself and make something more of your earning potential in your life and then taking action on it. And I think most people just never get over that belief that they can. So that's kind of sad. And it's not an easy process, but it's not super complicated either. If you've been following me, you know I've been hustling to, improve myself, but I'm still not some, billionaire traveling the world, impacting people like Elon Musk. It takes time. You have to have patience. So back to this dessert, but not broccoli analogy. Basically, what I'm talking about here is food. So if you were growing up in America, you've probably heard this phrase either from your parents or maybe it's, at the very least, you've heard it in pop culture or in TV shows or from your classmates. But it's this basic idea that most kids, they hate eating the healthy food like broccoli and liver and all that not tasty stuff like spinach. And they love eating the junk food like ice cream, like the desserts, like the chocolate cakes that you get at the end of dinner. Now, of course, there's some exceptions, and I actually kind of love the kids who kind of like spinach and healthy food because it's good for them. It's going to improve their lives. I've actually met people like that. Once in a blue moon, you'll meet someone who's like, I love spinach and vegetables and all this stuff. So good for those people. But for the most part, most people are normal and they have normal urges and needs, kind of like me. I wish I was super into computer programming or stock investing so I could be the next Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. But I just have normal urges and I like normal stuff like video games. So that's just kind of how it is. And so most people, they like desserts and they don't like vegetables or broccoli. So what I mean by desserts but not broccoli is that most people like desserts but not broccoli. And they think that's, the delightful way of doing things. Now, the problem is when you apply this to following your passion, the big issue that people make, and this really trips people up and screws with their ability to find their dream job, and that is they first hear about this. Oh, you have to find your passion, and it's revolutionary to them, and they think, oh my goodness, I've never heard this before. For my whole life, my Asian parents or whatever have been telling me, you have to suck it up and become a doctor or lawyer, and you have to do something you hate and suffer for 30 years, and then you can retire and enjoy life. And now they get all excited because there's this new opportunity. Oh, now I can find a job that I love and it's fun the entire time. And I don't have to suffer through the first half of my life and hope that I live long enough to enjoy the rest of my life. And I don't have to suffer and miss out on all the beauties of childhood and dating and all that stuff because I have to buckle down and study all the time. And so they get really excited about this, but then they swing to the opposite end of the pendulum, and that's the big mistake they make. You see, they swing to the other side of the pendulum, and they believe that now they have to find a job, maybe even right off the gate on their first attempt or their first job or second job out of school. They believe that they have to have a job that's 100% fun all the time, and that if you're ever suffering or you're ever, not enjoying your work, that's a red flag, and then you have to quit the job and you have to move on. That level of high standards and perfectionism is going to ruin you. And let me explain to you why. It's because what you're essentially doing is you are believing that, all I have to do is find, some type of dinner where everything's dessert and I never have to eat vegetables ever again or broccoli, and it's all just desserts but not broccoli. And that's completely wrong. And I'll give you some real life examples to illustrate this. So I kind of had this idea myself for a while. On a deeper level, I had this idea, and that caused some issues. I think if you had confronted me and asked me out loud, I wouldn't have admitted it, but on some deeper level, I definitely had this in the past, and it was too extreme. I thought I had this thought, and what happens is you have too high standards, and maybe you might not even accept your first job because no, it's not perfect, and it's not the best job in the world. Well, suck it up, because that's not how it works. If you study the lives of successful people, most of them kind of transitioned and they took several jobs, and those jobs, each one, most of them, sometimes, it's inevitable. There's sometimes steps down in the ladder, but, in general, they kind of like transition up. Each job they learned stuff that they didn't like about the job, but then they found a job that was maybe 10% or 15% better. And it just kept moving around. And so the big issue that a lot of people make is that they think it has to be the best job right out of the gate. And that's just not going to happen when you're an entry-level young professional and you're in a competitive environment with all these other people and hundreds, if not thousands of resumes that you're competing against. Sometimes you have to settle a bit and gain some skills and then work your way up, or at least be able to, build your resume a bit. Of course, you want to find the best job you can out of school, but Warren Buffett, he says it himself in a lot of interviews. He says, you're not going to find it on your first or second attempt, but you just got to keep moving and improving and learning what you like and don't like, and learning and building your skill set so that you can ladder your way up and use a stepping stone to move towards maybe another job, a promotion, or another job offer that you like. Or sometimes you can manufacture and change your current job to something that you like. And there's a great book on this called Getting There. I've read it a couple of times now, and there's so many examples of people like this in the book. For example, there's Anderson Cooper. This guy went through the ringer to finally get to where he is now. At first he couldn't even get a job, even though he went to an Ivy League school. So then he did freelancing and he went out on his own. And that was the best thing that happened to him, because if he had gotten his job, he would have been kind of just, in a parallel space with no growth potential. But he tried out and tested these different things. He even, kind of partially created his own freelancing job. Then there's this great book called Winning by Jack Welch, one of the greatest business people of all time. And Jack Welch has made a lot of business friends, and he has this one friend who was the CEO of eBay. And he uses this story of her career progression as a great example about how finding your job and connecting the dots looking forward is impossible to do. This woman who was the CEO of eBay, her work experience was kind of all across the board. One day she was working for a toy company as a corporate executive, and then next day she was off into shipping and distribution, and then she was in consumer product goods, and she had to deal with a company that did sold mustard and dressing and ketchup, and it was kind of all across the board. But once she kind of experienced everything. She built all these skills, and all of a sudden the internet was invented. And she couldn't even have predicted it because the internet wasn't around then. And then something called eBay was around. And all of a sudden she had great experience, and it was perfectly suitable for a company like eBay that sells almost everything. So, I'm not saying, and Jack Welch isn't saying that, you just kind of hope for the best and magically all the random experience you have will one day connect. He's saying that, sometimes you never know. You just kind of want to see what job opportunities are out there and what skill sets resonate with you. And you want to build on that and build across that. And there's so many other examples from the book Getting There, which is basically a whole book profiling like 50 of the world's most successful people. It's incredibly interesting. So dessert before broccoli, is something that I think cripples a lot of people and really screws with a lot of people's head. Stop trying to think that you have to have this perfect job. I'm not saying lower your standards so low that you take some crappy job, but actually have the wherewithal, the willpower to realize that you can't be like this person who has these super high standards. And to use a dating analogy, you can't be the guy who thinks he's a 10 and deserves a 10 when you're actually a 2. If you're overweight and you're socially inept and you're gross and you don't groom yourself and you're broke, don't have the attitude that you deserve a Victoria's Secret angel supermodel as your wife. I'm not saying supermodels are 10 out of 10s all the way around. They may not be the most hardworking people, but you get the idea. So keep these things in mind. Another thing about dessert before broccoli is that sometimes the broccoli never goes away. This is a huge insight, and I think it's probably the most important thing you'll get out of this podcast episode. People don't understand the subtleties, the details, and the importance of the idea that the broccoli is will never go away, and that's good. And I'll give you a story that explains. So, I am getting really into CrossFit. I joined as a way to make friends, and I figured, if I'm going to do this, I might as well learn from the best. So I started watching a lot of documentaries and just video profiles, like 20-30 minute long profiles of some of the best CrossFit athletes of all time. These people do it full time, and they compete at the CrossFit Games every year, and they make a good amount of money, multiple 6 figures, if they can maintain a high ranking every year. And this one guy called Matt Frazier, he's like the new reigning champion. Like he's won second place 2 or 3 times in a row. Now he's won first place 2 or 3 times in a row. And this is almost unheard of. There's only one other guy, Rich Froning, who's has been as consistent. He was 6-time first place champion before he decided to move to the team competition. But the point is, I watched Matt Frazier's one of his video documentaries, and this guy went on for 20 minutes talking about how he had to do all this work year round that no one else is willing to do, and that's what made him succeed. And he kept quoting this phrase over and over again. This quote that you've probably heard, and the quote goes, "You have to do what others aren't willing to do today so that you can do what others can't do tomorrow." And he wasn't complaining about it. He was just kind of emphasizing the point that most people see the highlight reel, but even him, he has to do all this horrendous stuff every day, work out for 4 hours a day and suffer and do workouts that he doesn't want to do, so that when it's game time, he can do what no one else can do and win. And he just kept emphasizing that. He kept emphasizing how everyone just hypes him up and takes all these pictures on the actual days of competition, but no one really bothers to profile him when he's in the gym and was suffering every day for the rest of the year. And he wasn't complaining about it. He was really emphasizing that. And I noticed a pattern. A lot of the other video profiles I saw of other athletes, they mentioned similar stuff. And I think the big message here is that most people think, oh, once you become like this superstar athlete that's traveling the world and making all this money, you know, it's all peaches and roses and you're having fun all the time, because isn't the phrase follow your passion, and shouldn't it be fun all the time? And I'm not saying that you can't have mostly dessert. You might find a job where it's mostly dessert and mostly fun, but realize that sometimes it will still be a grind. You may enjoy it and it may be your passion, but there will still be broccoli. There will still be a small portion, or maybe a good sized portion of broccoli, stuff that you don't want to do, but that's going to get you to the luxury lifestyle or just the life that you want to live. I don't know. It's basically what I'm saying is that it's a bit more complicated than you think, but not too complicated. Hopefully this helped. At least it was food for thought. No pun intended. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode of the podcast.
Thank you for listening to Will's Personal Development Podcast. You can find more at willyoulaugh.com.